Hello everyone, welcome to our playthrough of Assassin's Creed 2, and this will also apply to the other Assassin's Creed games, but currently at the moment we're struggling with AC1, we're having to take alternative measures for that, but eventually we'll get to it. So I'm going to be joined by my friend Bakal, because we're both massive Assassin's Creed fans.
Hi, it's me.
And what better way to start off this fantastic game series that eventually spiraled out of control into the mess that is Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Valhalla, then by starting with AC2, one of the greatest Assassin's Creed games ever made. So, since we're not going to be starting with AC1, I'll try to inform you a bit of the story right now. So, Assassin's Creed is all about the past day and the modern day. So right now, this cutscene is showing both the past and the present. You're playing as Desmond Miles, a character from the present, who is essentially using a device made by Abstergo, a company that has taken a lot of influences from a first civilization that existed way before humans did. And this first civilization is far more advanced than the humans of this generation. And using the first civilization data, they were able to construct a device known as an Animus, a device that allows the user to essentially look at the genetic memories of their ancestors. And in AC1, Desmond Miles was looking at the genetic memories of Altair ibn al-Lahad, which by the way is a really cool name. And through Altair, he was able to discover who Altair was, and then the whole origin of the Assassins and the Templars, and then he was also able to discover the first civilization relics. So Altair had actually discovered the first civilization relic, known as an apple. And the apple is a device that allows the user to control the minds of individuals who have this neurotransmitter present because the humans and the first civilization had actually breathed together during that period. That's one of the...
What led to the neurotransmitter is that they implanted it.
They implanted it in the by breathing, right? Am I correct?
Well, they implanted the neurotransmitter when they were creating humans as a race of slaves for people to work for them. And then when they breeded with humans, that's when they got hybrid people who didn't have the neurotransmitter.
Huh. That's odd, though, because I would assume the Isu DNA would actually... I'm sorry, the Isu was also known as the first civilization, but I'm surprised that the Isu DNA doesn't allow this... Or is this neurotransmitter specific to human DNA? I'm a little confused by that.
To humans. Because, apparently in Assassin's Creed lore, the humans were, evolved from monkeys, like we have in our real world, but, the reason we evolved from monkeys is because the first Civ made us that way, but they wanted a slave race of people to work for them, so they needed the neurotransmitter to control them to work.
And they made the neurotransmitter specific to humans to control them.
Yeah.
Okay, because Desmond Miles, also known as Subject 17, he has traces of first Civ DNA. He has about 0.952% of first Civ DNA, and it's this first Civ DNA that allows users to use the apple or any other pieces of Eden. And the thing I'm very confused about with that is how does the whole mind control aspect work in that case? When you're using the apple, do you have to not have the Isu DNA in order to actually be mind controlled by it? That's the part that confuses me.
Well, if you're the one using the apple, I don't think you're being mind controlled by the apple, because you're the one controlling the minds of others.
Yeah, but Al-Mualim was tainted by the apple, though. And then
I think he was also because he was secretly on the side of the Templars too, and that's kind of what caused it.
Yeah, but then what about in the case of Abbas? Abbas had fallen under the temptation of the apple, and Altair even acknowledges this. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Layla was using the stuff of Hermes, and it was actually corrupting her. In a sense. Or is that whole corruption aspect very different to the whole idea of actually being mind controlled by the device?
Well, I think it's kind of mind control, but it's not exactly. Because I think the apple is the only thing that's specifically for mind control.
I suppose, yeah. Maybe the other ones are different.
Because in Unity you have the Sword of Eden, but that creates lightning stuff and explosions. But that doesn't mind control you.
Yeah, but then why do individuals who use the pieces of Eden get corrupted by the influence?
Probably because they don't have enough first of DNA to like control it.
Yeah, but then, or is it more so that they're so like tempted by the power that it just seems like they're being mind controlled by the device?
I guess.
Yeah, but that just seems very odd to me. You'd assume that Layla or Desmond or like Al Mualim or Abbas would actually have the self-awareness necessary to overcome that corrupting influence. Rather odd that it would work like that. But what's happening here is at the end of AC1, Desmond finds the piece of Eden and he gets extracted out of the Animus. And there's this whole process that's explained in the Ezio trilogy where prolonged exposure to the Animus leads to the development of a phenomenon known as the bleeding effect. And the bleeding effect is essentially where the past and present memories are blended together. And this creates very unusual effects. Like, for instance, you have hallucinations that occur in this game. So Desmond goes through these hallucinations of the past without actually having to be in the Animus. And then also, Desmond gains access to certain abilities that his ancestors have, like, for instance, Eagle Vision. And Eagle Vision is a special ability, but we'll actually get into the whole idea of Eagle Vision later on, once we actually get introduced to it.
Also, another thing with like the Animus and the bleeding effect is that like when you're in the Animus, you're not just like viewing memories of the ancestors, but like you feel like you're like inside your ancestor's body, like actually like controlling their movements.
Yeah.
So when you're outside the Animus being affected by the bleeding effect, you're actually the one like doing all those movements.
Yeah, the Animus isn't a simulation. Essentially what the Animus is, like, the reason why they explain it like that is it essentially allows the mind to be worked up. Like, the fact that the mind is feeling like it's being worked up by this this process that's going on enables Desmond to maintain full sync with his ancestor and not desynchronize. It's a very interesting process because I mean I've heard about this idea before in films and in media, and it's nice that they touched upon this. But the problem is that with the later games, Ubisoft has really gone out of control with the lore.
Yeah, and they just say like, oh, it's a simulation, and because of that, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we can literally have you collect Thor's hammer in Valhalla and have you like explode people's faces off with like Odin's spear.
Yeah, but I think we'll talk about those games later on, like maybe when we actually get to them, or if they actually tie into points that relate directly to what's happening in the game we're talking about right now. Just so it offers us a little bit more freedom of what to talk about. But we're now trying to escape Abstergo right now, and we don't have access to the Hidden Blade or any other weapons. We just have this fist fighting. And fist fighting is so much better than in AC1. AC1's fist fighting was horrible because you could only punch enemies once and then you had to block. But this one, it's a lot faster, but you don't exactly have the same kind of freedom.
I've also never tested if you can like actually die here or anything. I think you're like completely invincible because you don't have like an on-screen health bar or anything.
I know in Assassin's Creed 3 you could die as Desmond, but not in these games. Yeah.
But the modern day in AC3 is basically just AC3 but reskinned for modern day.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll talk about that tangent because Laser Z, a YouTuber who is very familiar with the lore of Assassin's Creed, he made a lot of statements about certain things in each of the Assassin's Creed games, and his whole perception on the modern day is something I'd like to touch upon when I actually get the chance, because I don't entirely agree with his full perception of Assassin's Creed 3's modern day, because of the placement of AC3 in the timeline, and also with the way the marketing has been for AC3. But like I said, well, I'll talk about that with Pakal. But we're now making our way over to the hideout with the assassins. So we just escaped from the Templar headquarters. Abstergo is an organization that is based throughout the entire world, and they descended from the Order of Ancients. The Order of Ancients were essentially proto-Templars introduced in Assassin's Creed Origins. But the Templars are a little bit different to the Order of the Ancients in the sense that they still view humanity as being superior to the Isu. The Order of the Ancients was kind of like an organization that just was entirely devoted to the Isu.
Them as gods.
Yeah, essentially. And that whole topic of the Isus actually being like perceived as gods, they're not actually gods. They're an advanced race of human beings, as I've already explained. But for some unknown reason, Ubisoft Quebec has completely messed up the lore on that, and they, for some reason, view the Isu as gods, and that's just one of the worst things that they could have done with the lore. And it sucks because a lot of the mystique that surrounds the Isu is just gone.
That with Valhalla.
I mean, with Valhalla, I don't consider it to be the same case because I don't feel like the Isu were portrayed that much as gods in Valhalla. I mean, they were more so the case in Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
I mean, at least in Odyssey, they still kind of like looked like Isu, but in Valhalla, they were like reskinned to actually look like the Norse people.
Yeah, and that's another thing as well. It's almost like with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the way the human mythology explains the whole idea of these gods seems to align properly with Isu history, which is one thing that's very strange. But again, we'll have to discuss these points later on in the game. But Lucy has successfully busted out Desmond. Lucy, if you could actually see it from the very first cutscene of Assassin's Creed 1 of this game, her ring finger is cut off during the time of the Crusades, and also before that point. The assassins used to mark themselves by cutting off their ring finger for the Hidden Blade, as a sacrifice to the Hidden Blade, as a sort of commitment. But then AC2 got rid of this requirement for the ring finger to be removed.
As you just saw there, her ring finger is not cut off. In the cutscene where she pretended to have her ring finger cut off, she actually just bent it backwards.
Did she?
Not actually. No, she just bent it backwards. She didn't actually cut it off.
Oh, I thought she did. I mean, did she have to be? Because Lucy was originally an assassin. Didn't they still maintain the whole tradition of cutting off the ring finger? Or was that or did Lucy just do that just symbolize that she is an assassin?
She just did that to symbolize that she was an assassin and be on Desmond's side.
Oh, I always thought her ring finger was cut off.
No, she just bent her finger backwards.
Okay. In fact, in AC1, you can actually trigger that whole moment. There's a lot of cutscene, there's a lot of conversations you can get into with Lucy in AC1, but we'll have to show that when we get the chance. And I love this. I love being able to interact with the characters in this part.
Well, this is actually required. The game doesn't actually let you in the Animus until you talk to everyone.
Yeah, but even still, I'd like to think that it is a choice, because then it means it has a lot more impact.
Yep. I mean, when we come out of the Animus again later after Sequence 6, it actually is a choice.
Yeah. So this is Rebecca Crane. So this is one of the assassins that is helping us. She's a really great character. I love her.
Yeah, but then she got ruined in the newer games, everything else.
Yeah. And then we have Sean Hastings over here.
Sean is best boy.
I remember you said that in Valhalla, Sean was so different to how he is here, for instance.
He is. He doesn't do any of this joking stuff at all. He's completely serious and so different. He just seems like a different person.
Yeah, and I think LaserZ touched upon that point in AC3 as well, with the way the seriousness of the game just seemed to be the focus rather than the more jovial sense. But I think you could easily explain that to the fact that they're 2 months away from being wiped out by the solar flare that the sun will be releasing, and I haven't really discussed that cataclysmic event yet. But they talk about this cataclysmic event that occurs on December 21st, 2012. Oh, I'm gonna listen to this dialogue right here. I like hearing this dialogue from Sean.
Please, mate, bother someone else, okay? I've got stuff to do. What part of I am busy don't you understand? Is it the I bit that refers to me? Is it the am bit that's like a doing thing? Is it that I'm busy? I'm busy.
And I love this line.
Lucy, what's wrong with this guy? I think he's stalking me.
Sean is best boy indeed.
So good.
Yeah, and also fun fact: Lucy's the only character that you can talk twice to in this sequence. You can't talk to the other characters twice.
I think Sean has 2 conversations later after Sequence 6.
I think, yeah, does he? I don't remember that. I don't even think you can talk to the characters after that point, can you?
Well, you have to talk to them before you go downstairs to Lucy.
Oh, okay.
And that's where they make the self-aware joke about the subtitles.
Yeah. So this right here, Lucy's talking about Eagle Vision. So you saw with the Eagle Vision that Desmond had the ability to read the combination to that keypad that allowed him to gain access to the code. I'm still kind of confused as to how Eagle Vision works specifically. I don't know if it's something related to the psychological process. It's almost like you have to will yourself to understand that you want to see this target in order for them to be highlighted in gold. But one confusing thing about Eagle Vision is that when you use Eagle Vision in AC1 and you use it to see Al Mualim, before the boss fight with Al Mualim, he's blue, but then he's actually red. So it seems like Eagle Vision has its flaws, but then it just seems like with the other games, it's the truth.
It's based on how like the person using Eagle Vision perceives the target.
Yeah, but then how does that contribute to them understanding who is the real target that they're looking for? That's what I don't understand.
Well, like target as in like the person that they're looking at, not like the target they're trying to kill. Because there's a moment in like the end of Rogue where like Haytham and Achilles are fighting, and like normally in that mission, if you look at Haytham in Eagle Vision, he's blue like an ally, but during that moment where they're fighting, Haytham is red like an enemy.
Yeah, but you could attribute that to a bug, though. You know, it could just be like he's being perceived as a normal NPC. But hang on a second. We gotta stop right here because this is the boy right here. This is the man who is the face of this franchise. Ezio Auditore da Firenze.
The one that they keep trying to copy with every game and failing.
Yeah, they will never get another Ezio because this guy at least had development in between multiple games.
Also, the best voice actor, Roger Craig Smith.
Yeah, Nolan North, Roger Craig Smith, and Troy Baker, they are the triad of individuals who make voice acting great. Insieme!
Also, like, the character that we're gonna see in a bit, which is, Vieri, it took me a few years to learn that he was voiced by Yuri Lowenthal.
Why is that name so familiar?
Because he plays Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Like, this is Spider-Man right here.
Really?
This is Spider-Man and versus Sonic the Hedgehog.
That's insane.
Yeah, dude.
Wow. So this is a little family feud that's happening between the Auditore family and the Pazzi family right here.
Also, the Pazzi are Templars, so this is like seeing the Templars before we actually learn about the Templars.
Yeah. But I talked about the Order of the Ancients and the Templars, but the Templars have actually existed, or rather I should be saying the Order of the Ancients and the Templars have actually existed way before the advent of the Assassins. So that's why they're so powerful, and that's why Abstergo has a lot of power, because they have a lot more experience than the Assassins. And also right here, you can actually throw these guys off the bridge.
Yeah. But then you lose out on money when you have to loot them.
Well, you still get a lot of money in the end, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's good money for the early game.
Yeah, but the thing with the Ezio games is that when you complete missions, you get money, and money's kind of pointless in this game. I mean,
I've 100%ed this game multiple times, and like all the other games multiple times. So like, if you're going for 100% in these games, like you need so much money.
Yeah, but this is really the only Ezio game where I utilize money, because the faction system in this game, where you have the ability to use money to buy mercenaries, courtesans, or thieves, I use factions a lot more in this game because it's very beneficial.
I still don't really use them probably as much as I should.
Yeah,
I
but
still use them sometimes.
yeah, but courtesans are so helpful for some of the missions in this game. Same in Brotherhood. We have Ezio's brother here, Federico. And, yep, you can tell that these guys are very jovial. They are definitely young, like, the audacity of youth, as Sadler from Resident Evil 4 would say.
17 right now, I think.
Hard to believe they're
Federico is
this
like-
young.
I think Federico is like a bit older, but Ezio is 17.
In fact, there was actually a film before AC2 released, I think, called Assassin's Creed, was it Lineage? Am I correct?
With the one with their dad.
Yeah, so that's kind of a prequel to AC2, and with that, it establishes some of the characters, but you don't really see Ezio that much, or even Federico. But I remember in one scene from Lineage, there's a moment where Ezio and Federico are playing chess, and Federico dominated at chess. He easily defeated Ezio at chess, and I can't grab this guy for some reason. That was weird. Never seen that issue before, where he just throws rocks. Come here, you. Yeah, the combat on this game is very, very powerful. You can decimate enemies because this is, of course, an action-adventure game. There's none of those cheap, like, arbitrary damage values that guarantee that you're going to be dealing with the enemies.
Based around stupid numbers and like stats and all that random crap.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Ti-
and there's no like random pieces of even that you can use in combat for like superpowers.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, it's not so dependent upon, like, getting these specific weapons. And I don't know what's going on with the AI right now, but the AI is really screwing up. And we are now going to be doing our first mission of the game. I mean, if you're not counting the whole fight with Vieri, of course. So this is introducing us to the parkour system right now, and the parkour on this game and in the Ezio trilogy is the best parkour system ever in the entire Assassin's Creed series.
You don't even have to follow Federico. You can just run straight through the road and run to the doctor.
Yeah, but where's the fun in that?
Speed run.
So yeah, you can do stuff like this, where you can bounce off walls to gain some momentum. I mean, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it right now because there's not a lot of ability to traverse the environment at the moment.
Yeah, we won't be getting the climb leap until like sequence 10 or something.
Yeah. And really, the climb leap is the only addition you get to the parkour system. I kind of wish they added a little bit more with the parkour. Like, Revelations...
Still the best parkour.
Yeah, like, Revelations added a lot to the parkour with the addition of the hook blade mechanic. And just with that simple addition with the hook blade, they made the parkour so much more interesting in Revelations. And you could do all these things you just couldn't do before.
Also, to win this race, you can just climb the front of the church.
Yeah, that's what I do every time. Federico doesn't stand a chance. Seems crazy that for a bunch of 17-year-olds who are this proficient at parkour. I almost wonder if Giovanni, like almost as if he was preparing his sons to be assassins, he actually made them go through this parkour training.
I think that's actually what it is. Like, he was secret assassin training before, like, they officially got into the Brotherhood, but then he gets killed and then the game happens.
Yeah, and then Ezio has to learn about the whole ideology of the assassins through Mario. Oh my god, I almost went right off. The detection on the climb leap, the detection only seems to occur a couple of seconds after you actually like jump off a ledge. So it can be very disadvantageous when you're trying to grab onto ledges that are very close to you. But this is...
Assassin's Creed has always kind of had issues with, like, not
Oh
where
shit!
you want to go.
I was close. I was trying to move to the right, but I fell off. Never had that happen before. Yeah, I just wanted to climb up, but I couldn't go to that side for some reason. But this right here is easily one of the greatest introductions to a game. You won't get any other cool introduction like this in any game that isn't the Ezio trilogy.
Life we lead, brother.
The best. It never change.
And may it never change us.
And this is it. Assassin's Creed 2, folks. Easily one of the greatest games ever made with this amazing title introduction. This was back when Ubisoft cared, where Assassin's Creed actually mattered. We don't get anything like this anymore.
This was back when Assassin's Creed was actually like relevant in the gaming community.
Yeah, I know. It was such an original idea, and just the kind of innovations it had with parkour and just the storytelling. It's so it's such an innovation. We don't get stuff like this nowadays.
And now every game is just like a Witcher 3 clone that like takes like elements from like any other game that exists.
Yeah, and it's just Witcher 3. I don't really see what's so impressive about The Witcher 3. I mean, I watched like Seraphim 17 do a playthrough of The Witcher 3, and The Witcher 3 just doesn't look that good, and the combat's very shit, and the voice acting is pretty bad as well. But this...
And it was made by CD Projekt Red, which people are like hating on nowadays because of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, Cyberpunk was a disaster. If you've seen like Laser Z's videos, some of the things that got through with Cyberpunk, and then some of the decisions that went through, and just the arrogance of CD Projekt Red. It was blasphemy, let me tell you. Absolute blasphemy. But like this game, like this is exactly what Assassin's Creed should be. And then like for instance, with the newer Assassin's Creed games, are so focused on trying to build like big open worlds, this and that, but they fail to make the world very deep. You don't need to have a big world to make a very deep game. This game's world is so great, and it's not even that big of a world. It's
it's not even just one city. You get like 4 cities in this game.
Yeah, and then Brotherhood went on a different kind of way entirely, where they made it focused on one city that just had a lot of thought put into it, and it made everything very seamless. And they put a lot of the cities, like a lot of the different cities, into side missions or like hidden things that you can unlock when you're achieving full sync. Like you could actually go into Firenze in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood if you were actually going through 100% sync. So that was definitely one of the reasons to go for full sync, to unlock these very fun missions, and the mission design in these older Assassin's Creed games is really good.
And like all the side missions actually impacted like the plot and like added to the plot and like actually mattered. But like now all the side missions in the games are just like, oh hey, there's a collectible here that doesn't do anything because it's pointless.
Yeah, and then they don't have a lot of thought put into it. Like I hate the side missions in Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. And like Valhalla didn't even have side missions; they were just world events that lasted for about 90 seconds, and every single one of them just ended with like some really stupid ending. It's like, oh, here's a big surprise ending, but it's like if you're doing it every single time, like if you ever watch The Incredibles, and you hear that old saying, if everyone's so special, that's just another way of saying no one is. If every single ending is just going to end in the same crazy way, where it's like so unexpected, then it might as well be expected. Like it's just so disappointing that is the case. And
like a lot of the side missions in Valhalla like don't even take themselves seriously, and like a lot of people say that Syndicate is a parody of Assassin's Creed, but honestly, also so is Valhalla.
yeah, but Odyssey is way more of a parody than with Valhalla. I'd say at least Valhalla had assassins.
Valhalla at least tried to be better.
Yeah. Definitely, but like where Assassin's Creed was at the point at which they were developing Assassin's Creed Valhalla between Origins and Odyssey, it was very hard to get anything substantial, and like Odyssey was such a shit game. It's easily the worst Assassin's Creed game ever made because it's not even an Assassin's Creed game, and then it just in general it's a bad game with the microtransactions, the terrible combat, the button mashy combat, the lackluster open world design. I mean, it's
just a grindy mess. You have to grind for hours, and you have to like do tons of side quests just to do one story mission.
Yeah, it's just it's so disappointing, and that's just the thing I didn't like about Origins and Odyssey, and it's the thing I don't like about a lot of RPG games that embrace these kind of level-gated systems. You're forced to go through side missions to actually progress with games when they develop, like when they level-gate everything, where they make enemies scale with you, and they have these levels that if you're not a high enough level, you can't do anything. But they're just the same enemies, like regardless of whether you're the same level as them or they're a higher level than you, they're still the same enemies. So it makes no sense. And then you're forcing yourself to go through side missions. You might as well just make the side missions like main missions. It's such a disconnect and it makes no sense. At least this game's side missions actually feel different from the main missions, and that's justified. You don't even have to do the side missions on this game. I mean, my main criticism with the side missions is that they're not exactly the most developed side missions. Like Brotherhood definitely won up the side missions qualities. The side missions in Brotherhood are easily the best side missions because there's just a lot of different side missions. Whereas there's just like beat up events and delivering leathers, but they're all just like tasks essentially, not really like crafted missions that tie into the main plot so much.
Also, Brotherhood added the full sync objectives in like all the missions of the games, which are like stuck around all the way until Syndicate. So like that was like added like challenge for the game to like an extra side thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of I wonder what gave Ubisoft the idea to do 100% sync, because when you think about it, the 100% sync doesn't really make sense in terms of the lore. Or it's more so like it's just representing that Desmond is going through a lot more effort to synchronize with his ancestor. That's the only thing I can think of with the lore aspect in that part.
Because that's what it is. Because like when they introduce it in Brotherhood, they say it's like doing events the way Ezio lived them.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you're already reliving Ezio's memories and you're not exactly controlling what he's doing, then the event should play out regardless of whether he's trying to sync with his ancestors or not. And, like, why did this whole idea of 100% sync get introduced with Brotherhood, yet we don't see this in AC2? That's the confusing part.
Well, also in the lore, like, the Animus gets, like, upgraded between AC2 and Brotherhood, so maybe that's what they added in the update.
Yeah, but I mean, if the Animus was going to show Ezio's life the way it was, I mean, you could argue that, like for instance, in AC2, there are two sequences that originally you had to get DLC for, but the whole lore reasoning behind that was Rebecca was trying to repair those damaged memories. Like that, I can understand as being a justification for why getting full sync would just allow you to gain access to memories, because like maybe certain memories were just corrupted, or the Animus couldn't really interpret them. But I mean, the full sync stuff in Brotherhood, it's just kind of confusing to. Shoot, I just skipped that whole moment, but it's not really that important because the subtitles already show that. But the full sync stuff is just a little confusing to interpret in terms of the lore.
Well, I think it's because like the Animus isn't like a concrete like showing of the events. It's like more like a representation of it, and that's how like that's why like different players do things differently in the game, because it's not like a concrete representation of it. It's like
Yeah, but that's not really I don't factor that into the perception, because like that exists outside the perceptions of the characters. Like for instance, to relate it to some other game, for instance, like in Resident Evil 4. In Resident Evil 4, you had access to the Merchant, and I consider the Merchant to just simply be a gameplay mechanic that's just given a personality and a body, because there's really no context as to why he exists. I feel like he's just something that only exists in the eyes of us gamers, yet not in the eyes of the Resident Evil characters. And similarly, the whole concept of one player doing this differently and another person doing this differently, that exists within the eyes of us gamers, but not in the eyes of us of the characters. So that's not really factored into the perception of that. That's why I don't judge it based on that. So I mean, and then the whole concrete representation thing, if you're going to be building off of that, then that would honestly give some justification for Odyssey, because, I mean, you could argue that Odyssey's interpretation, like with being able to pick your gender, you could argue that's just part of the fact that the Animus doesn't concretely know, like, how the events turned out, but Odyssey itself just violates a lot of lore, so you can't really build off of an argument like that. That's just how I feel about that, Pikal.
I mean, I guess I can see where you're coming from, because like a criticism that I've heard of Valhalla is a lot is that like assassin things like the Hidden Blade and like its social stuff and like wearing a hood only exist in the game for the player and not for Eivor. So like Eivor doesn't really care, but like is there for the player base.
Yeah, exactly. Like look at the way these NPCs are walking about right now. You like the way they're walking about right now. They look kind of like they were programmed to walk like that. Not really so much like realistic human behavior. Like that's how it is in our eyes. But from their perspective, they're probably walking like normal human beings. Like that's how you compartmentalize the perceptions between the game and the real world. So that's how you judge the perceptions basically. Oh, and by the way, here's Leonardo da Vinci.
Also another best boy.
Yep.
This is. Leonardo is the Animus best boy, and Sean is the modern day best boy.
Yeah. I believe there's actually some hints that maybe Leonardo actually has first Civ DNA based on a cutscene that you see later on when Ezio gets the piece of Eden.
I think it was like actually like confirmed by like Ubisoft or something. Maybe I might be wrong, but I think like he actually does have like higher concentrations of first Civ DNA, and that's how he can like control the apple and like study it when it's given to him in Brotherhood.
Yeah, but
And
again,
can,
like
understand the first Civ temple in Romulus. Stuff.
Yeah, but how did we? To our knowledge, Al Mualim and Abbas didn't have first Civ DNA, correct?
I think to our knowledge they didn't have any.
So then, how were they able to use the apple then, if they didn't have first Civ DNA?
Because I think technically anyone has like I think they're able to like use the apple or like pieces of Eden to a certain extent, but like if they don't have the right DNA for it, then that's when it starts to corrupt them.
I suppose, but then like why do they get corrupted though? Is it just simply that it's the apple somehow touches upon their darker side? It's strange. Like I'm not too sure about that particular aspect.
I think it's because like it goes back to like when the first Civ was using like them as like to make humans like a slave workforce. Like only the first Civ were the ones using the piece of Eden, so like they require first Civ DNA to be able to be used.
Oh, and then again, the neurotransmitter that was used to control them was tied to the human DNA, not to the Isu DNA. Correct?
Yeah, but the first Civ back then were the only people actually using the pieces of Eden. So like that's why they required their own DNA for it.
Or maybe what's happening is, yes, they are able to use the apple, but like the whole ability to use the apple, and then the apple actually like maybe what's happening is they are like able to influence other people, but at the same time they're not able to directly focus the apple's energy to focus specifically on these specific individuals. So maybe it affects them as well. So maybe like the Isu ability grants them that ability to maintain more focus with the apple, so that it doesn't accidentally corrupt them. Maybe it's something like that.
Yeah, I guess, because in AC3 they showed off a thing where, like, if enough people are, like, told to think about, like, the exact same thing, that it actually, like, gets created for real life.
Wait, say that again?
In AC3 they said that, like, if enough people are being controlled by the apple at the same time, and that they're told to, like, create or, like, think of something, then it actually gets created in, like, real life.
Oh yeah, I think I heard about this. Yeah, didn't Juno mention that?
Like they were being told to like think about a tree, and the tree actually gets created.
Yeah, you're right. I remember
in, like, one
that.
of the Juno conversations in the Grand Temple.
Yeah, so it seems like a lot of focus is required from the apple to actually use it, and maybe the first Civ DNA allows more control and focus over it, and without actually inflicting self-harm. And that would actually make a lot more sense as to why the apple would lead to them corrupting themselves. Also, by the way, here's Ducho. Ducho's an asshole. We actually see him several times in each of the game. Yeah. He appears in Brotherhood, he appears in Revelations, just as a way for players to vent their frustrations.
He only appears in Brotherhood in the DLC, so like if you don't play the DLC, you don't see him at all.
Yeah. And then in Revelations, he somehow happens to be in Constantinople.
Yeah, he's just like there for no reason. I don't think they ever explain it.
I mean, then again, like, Constantinople is considered the crossroads of the world, so maybe a lot of the major trading routes have passed through Constantinople. And Ezio did spend quite a lot of time in Constantinople, so maybe that's the main reason why he was there.
Yeah,
Ooh, also...
like, they don't offer like an in-game explanation for it or anything, so
Yeah.
it's kind of weird seeing that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you accidentally kill Ducho, it will actually fail you. If you throw him off a ledge, for instance, it will fail you. You have to actually beat him up.
I've never even like thrown him off a ledge or anything.
Yeah, because I managed to get him to follow me because the guards have the same kind of parkour ability, which is definitely one of the main joys with this game and also with the Ezio trilogy. Because the guards have the ability to parkour, it leads to the chases being so much fun and really hectic.
And they also scream funny lines at you.
Yeah, this game has the best characters for the enemies, because the enemies actually say some pretty hilarious quotes when they're chasing you or when they're fighting you, and they got rid of that in AC3 and in the other games because they don't really say much. And you can't even get into a lot of cool chases, like in Unity. Dodging bullets on that game was physically impossible, and in Syndicate you could dodge enemies, but the chases just weren't very hectic. And then they got rid of chases entirely. Like, look at the amount of arrows that the enemies could spam in Origins and Odyssey, and then in like Valhalla.
And also in Origins and Odyssey of Valhalla, that like slowed you down when you tried to run away from enemies. So
Yeah.
it's like a lot harder to do.
At least in Valhalla, you had the ability to sprint, so you could actually run away from guards. But literally, when you're in combat, it's like you're trying to move a wardrobe. It's so hard to move. It's so silly. It's like they're trying to force you into combat.
And combat isn't even good.
Yeah, the combat in Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla. I mean,
The newer
Valhalla's...
games just like completely forget about stealth and it's just like, oh, combat only, because combat is fun and good and killing people is good for money.
I mean, admittedly, like, Valhalla's stealth was a lot better because you could at least instantly kill enemies if you had that feature enabled.
Yeah. Except they say it's not the correct way to play it.
Yeah, that's so insulting. Like, that is a complete misrepresentation of good game design. It's somehow bad to have an instant kill option to prevent grindy gameplay and microtransactions from being too much of an issue. Like, are you
That's
serious?
also the reason why like Ubisoft Quebec like removed and like banned all like the XP grinding quests for the story creator mode for Odyssey, but then like pushed the microtransactions for like grinding experience points.
Yeah, it's just like it's trash, absolute trash. It's just
bad game design and like a bad like company decisions.
yeah, that's corporate greed right there.
Yeah. That's why I always say that Ubisoft is becoming the next EA.
Yeah, and also this is really the best way to drop down from ledges. They didn't introduce the whole parkour down system until Assassin's Creed Unity, so you have to tackle.
I just jump off.
Yeah, you do get a free heal every time you do a mission, but I just prefer to jump down just in case the falls are pretty precarious. I mean, admittedly, the only time you can ever really die from fall damage is if the fall is really extreme, but a lot of the times when you go into the danger state, the game has to actually put you into the danger state before it actually kills you, which is interesting to consider. And then they removed this feature with I think it was AC4 that removed this whole feature where it's not such a binary system where you have to go into the danger state to actually specifically die. There was no danger state system in Assassin's Creed 4 when you were low on life.
I mean, I think there is actually, but like it's not like required to go into it to die.
Yeah, and now we're going to be getting to the thick of things with the plot here. And this is where Giovanni's life as an assassin comes back to bite him. We're also going to get introduced to the various factions, because this is where we get introduced to the mercenaries and the courtesans and the thieves. And then we also get introduced to the pigeon coop system.
Which then leads to side content, which is good because like they tie the side content into the story.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, I just forgot. I need to. There's actually a letter you can read from the very first Giovanni mission. Where's the message from? Yeah, this is it. So this is talking about Assassin's Creed lineage. So it talks about the Milano incident, and you see a lot of that happen where they're trying to unravel this conspiracy with the Pazzi and then the other families that are involved in this Templar conspiracy. Yeah, so that's all you really need to know if you're reading through that. But the other documents you can't actually read because they're sealed up, and Ezio says it's wrong because I mean his father is specifically instructing him to do this. And he has a lot of respect for his father.
Yeah, because Ezio, a good boy. Eh?
Yep, and it's nice that they've actually done that, because it ties into the whole idea of the assassin ideology believing in love as the central thing that binds them together. And Ezio mentioned in Assassin's Creed Embers that there are more devoted followers who preach hatred than actual love. And it's nice that Ezio actually came out from a really great family, because then it actually makes it possible for him to understand the whole idea of love that binds the order together. It's actually interesting to consider that. I didn't actually start thinking about that until now.
And then like it gives like a better insight into how he thinks about like humanity and society, and like how people need to treat each other with respect better to like actually be a better person.
In fact, this actually
back to the real world.
This actually leads me on to a tangent I'd like to discuss, where I feel like the perceptions on the assassin ideology and the Templar ideology, I feel like with some of the recent games, they've taken a very superficial approach to try to explain it to a bunch of 9-year-olds, but it's not really true. Like, with the assassins, for instance, you'd assume that their prime ideology is associated with freedom, and then with the Templars, it's order. But I feel like in the Ezio trilogy, it wasn't really so superficial. It was a lot deeper than that. The assassins weren't really fighting for freedom. It's just freedom was more so, like, if you were to think of chemistry, for instance, as a byproduct of their fight for peace. The methodology that they employ to actually ensure peace, one of the byproducts of that is freedom. Whereas with the Templars, they have this almost totalitarian view as to how like humanity should be run, which ironically lines up with the first civilization. So it's quite ironic how the Templars don't really like the Isu, yet the way they behave is very similar to how the Isu behave, which I thought was very interesting to point that out. But I feel like with the Templars, with the way the Templars are portrayed in the Ezio trilogy, it's a lot deeper than just simply they're fighting for order. Like, the way they ensure peace is more ruthless. Because when you think of order, like when you think of the difference between freedom and order, the whole idea of ruthless actions is brought into consideration. And if you've seen some of the horrible things that the Templars have done in AC1 and AC2 and AC Brotherhood and AC Revelations, you could really see why the Templars are just very flawed. You can't run a civilization like that. It's like with Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump, like, and this actually relates to a Star Wars quote that I heard in Star Wars Rebels. Like, Admiral Thrawn from Star Wars Rebels, he mentioned that the Jedi fought for what was morally right rather than what was strategically sound. But when you're trying to run a civilization, it's not about what's strategically sound, it's about what's morally right, because the person who's leading the civilization has to do what's morally right to actually ensure, like, civilization's growth. And relating that to the idea of the assassins, I would say that the assassins fight for what's morally right, more so than what's strategically sound. And the Templars fight for what's strategically sound, and that's just something that is also how you think of the whole ideology of the Assassins and Templars from a deeper perspective compared to how they're portrayed nowadays with the advent of AC3. So that's just my perception of that. I wonder how you feel on that, Pikal.
Well, I know there's like like there's like parts of these games where like they mention it like the assassins and templars like want the same thing, but they just have different ways of going about it and trying to achieve that.
Yeah, that's what I was touching upon, and like, I just question like how the Templars think they can actually run a civilization if they're as ruthless as they are. Like, if they don't value humanity, how could they possibly run a civilization? That's why like when you think of the death penalty, for instance, the death penalty is a very controversial thing because it kind of goes against the very nature of civilization. If everyone like is actually judging the fate of this one individual, and that really goes to show just how controversial the whole idea is. You don't want to build your foundation of civilization based on that, and that's just something that aligns with what the Templars feel. In fact, that's actually an interesting discussion. If the Templars or Assassins were to actually have this kind of prison system, would the Assassins not embrace the death penalty, or and then the Templars would, or would they both kind of embrace the death penalty, but the means in which they would do it would be different?
I feel like that also kind of relates to like the ironies of the Creed, where like the assassins kill to achieve peace, but like they also don't want to kill people.
Yeah, and in fact, this actually brings on to a point that's actually discussed in AC2. There's actually a codex page left behind by Altair that when you find all 30 pages, and it's actually required for the story, you get to piece together the ironies of the assassins, and then you hear Altair's perception on the Creed, and it's such an interesting thing to read. It's just such an interesting piece of philosophy to consider. Like, it feels like after playing Assassin's Creed, I feel so disillusioned with the world nowadays. Like, just hearing the philosophy of the Assassins and the Templars and just how deep it is. It's such a deeply ingrained story that just connects greatly.
It's so crazy how like you could relate this thing from like a video game from like 2009 that's like over 10 years old to like the real world that we're living in 2021 right now.
Yeah, and like when people have such like stigma towards video gamers, I'm just like, you people are living in ignorance. You're not really seeing video games for what they are. I mean, if you're thinking of video games from like the olden days, I mean, yes, you could kind of consider them mindless experiences, but video games have really progressed to a point where it's become a way of life. And Assassin's Creed further contributes to this. Like, everything you're seeing in the Ezio trilogy, it all feels like a way of life. It gives more depth to real life. And that's just one of the things I really appreciate about this game series. And it's just with the newer games, it's like they're reverting back to.
It's also like helped by like setting the series in like different historical time periods, because like it gives you like an appreciation of like how far we've come as like humanity as a society from like different like ideologies.
Yeah, exactly, and I just feel like with the newer Assassin's Creed games, they're kind of just like, they're not really touching upon this so much. Like, the philosophy just seems to be a second thought with the games. They're just trying to push out something that's just very appealing to gamers, specifically gamers, not really to anyone who has a deep investment with the philosophy of the Assassins and Templars. Like, Origins didn't really touch upon the origin of the Assassins that well, and then Odyssey just completely removed Assassins and Templars entirely, and it was just a mindless comedy. Like, it's just, it's bad. That game is so bad.
Like, in the older games, the setting was like the story, but in the newer games, the setting is just like the backdrop for the video game, and it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, like, they actually, I feel like with the Ezio trilogy and the older Assassin's Creed games, they use the setting to complement their own philosophies and all the mentalities associated with an Assassin's Creed game. But because they're trying to, like, they're taking the whole history is our playground literally with the newer Assassin's Creed games, it just seems like the historical setting doesn't really tie in a lot to the main storyline.
It's like what I said earlier, how like the stealth stuff for like the assassin stuff in Valhalla is only affecting the player and not Eivor. Like, the setting in the newer games is just like, it's just for you and not for the characters.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a good summary. Oh, and also, we're going to be doing the patented Leap of Faith. I did this earlier, but I didn't really get a chance to discuss it. But this is really, really cool, even though it is a little ridiculous that they can actually jump off a high place into a hay bale and just survive.
And Origins like gave us like the history behind it, but then Odyssey just completely forgot about that and just went away with it.
Yeah.
Like the one game after.
Exactly. Exactly. The one game after. Like, how does that make any sense? Was no one discussing that at all?
Yeah, and then in Valhalla, like they have you learn the Leap of Faith, but like again, it just exists for a gameplay reason and not because Eivor actually cares about it.
Yeah, it's like you learn the Leap of Faith.
Like,
that's really it.
Yeah, like why even have it in the game? There's no point.
Exactly, and the assassins are kind of underutilized. I mean, admittedly, we both differ in our perception of this, but I know you didn't like the way Basim, for instance, was portrayed in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But I actually liked Basim because I think the parts where he really stood out, where we actually got some time to spend time with him, I thought they were a lot of fun. I mean, yes, there weren't as many of them, but when you're only focusing on those moments like, specifically and not actually looking at them as a whole, I think Basim was a really great character. It's why his betrayal at the end of Valhalla when he tries to attack Sigurd, it hit me very hard. And originally when I saw that betrayal scene, I thought it meant that he was actually a member of the Order of the Ancients. Like, it was such a betrayal that it just absolutely hit me hard. But it turns out what happened was Basim was just a reincarnation of an older Isu. And I did actually recognize that. I didn't really understand the context at the time. I mean, even though he did say his brother, but I did play through the mythical arc, so that should have occurred to me, but I didn't think it was possible, and it makes no sense for an Isu to adopt the philosophies of an assassin. So why on earth was Loki portrayed as an assassin through Basim? Do you have an answer for that, Pikal?
I think it's like in the same way that like when you're playing Valhalla, like, and then you do an assassination, like Odin shows up in like the confession scene with Eivor, and they're like different personalities in the same body, but like Basim just chose to accept Loki's personality, and Eivor chose to reject Odin's personality.
I guess that's one explanation, but is it really a choice in the matter, or is it more so like a fight between each personality?
What we see from Eivor's perspective is more like a fight, but I don't know how it is for like Loki or other Isu.
Yeah. Also,
because we never see that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, that music was very nostalgic. That music that plays when Ezio is putting on the robes is one of the best pieces of music in this game.
Yeah, freaking Jesper Kyd, dude, like one of the best like composers for video games ever.
Yeah. And didn't he actually do the soundtrack for Valhalla?
He was one of the 3 people that did it. Yeah.
Yeah, admittedly, I didn't like Assassin's Creed Valhalla's soundtrack that much. I mean, there are a couple of songs that I liked, like one combat music I did like, the music that plays when you're fighting Basim, and then the music that plays when you're trying to escape from Valhalla. Those are examples of music that I really like from Valhalla, but I mean, Valhalla didn't have enough pieces of music to really make it stand out, and that's another thing I need to talk about. So LaserC touched upon this point, but he feels that the music in Assassin's Creed allows you to have more of a connection to these games, and I 100% agree with him. Like, the music gives power to everything that occurs in an Assassin's Creed game, and this is one of the main reasons why the Ezio trilogy is so good, because the music has a lot of emotional weight to it, and they're so beautiful, and just the grace behind them further complements the gracefulness of what it means to be an assassin. Like, just the whole, like, exploring the whole philosophy of the Assassins and Templars just complements the whole beauty, and the music complements that greatly, and that's what I really love about the music on the Ezio trilogy. But right here, we have this whole moment where Ezio is trying to rescue his father, but right now he's having to visit the Gonfalonieri in order to arrange this moment where he's going to present the evidence. But you'll see in the background at some point in this cutscene that the main villain is going to show himself. And rather interesting, I like the symbolism behind that. It's almost like the devil is occupying the mind of the Gonfalonieri. Like, Rodrigo Borgia in this scene feels like the devil. He's almost like, you know those moments in cartoons where you have the good side and the bad side just sitting on your shoulder? That's what it feels like right now.
Or it's also kind of like how, like, I don't know if you're watching WandaVision on Disney Plus, but like it's kind of like how people think that like Mephisto is gonna show up in that.
Mephisto? I haven't seen WandaVision, but Mephisto? I did not think.
Mephisto is the Marvel devil.
Yeah, but he's the main he's kind of the main villain towards Ghost Rider. So kind of odd that he's being introduced in WandaVision.
It's because WandaVision is like taking the plot of like the House of M comic series, where like Wanda has kids and like the kids are like part of Mephisto's soul.
What? That's insane.
Yeah.
If it's building off that, then I have to watch WandaVision at some point.
Yeah, you better. They released episode 7 today.
Yeah, but do you like WandaVision right now? Should I check it out?
Oh yeah, it's so good, dude. It's so good.
I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Like the first 2 episodes are like it takes a while to like build up and get into it, but like the later episodes are like insane.
Wow, that you've definitely given me motivation. But I'm gonna do this mission right here, which is the final part of sequence 1. I believe. Is that true? This is the end of sequence 1?
Yeah.
Okay, but this is the execution scene, and this scene is referenced in Assassin's Creed Embers when Ezio is talking with Xiao Yun. But this is where his family's going to get executed, specifically his father and brothers. And this is
Also, a weird thing is that like they're supposed to have the ropes around their neck, but when you see them from the back, they're just like floating behind their backs.
oh, and also another thing as well is you don't have access to the ability to disarm, but during this whole memory, you actually have the ability to disarm the brutes, and I'm going to try to do that when I get the chance. But this is such a well done scene. Like, look at the motion as well. Like, the lack of mocap cutscenes in Odyssey specifically, and also in Valhalla, definitely goes to show the lack of quality displayed with the characters. Like, this is not even mocapped, but this is all just like carefully crafted out with animations. It looks so great compared to Odyssey and Valhalla.
Yeah, they didn't start doing mocap until like AC3, so there was still 2 other games after this where they didn't use mocap at all.
Yeah.
Except for like maybe facial animations, but other than that, like no mocap was done.
That's odd though, because wasn't the Uncharted 1 released in 2007? Weren't they using mocap back then?
Oh yeah, Uncharted 1 was released before this, and they definitely started with doing mocap.
Yeah.
Uncharted 2 was also the same year, as both 2009.
Alright, come here, you. The taunt on this game is not very good.
Yeah.
And I couldn't disarm him for some reason. That was odd. God dang it! The timing on that is so specific. Come here.
The timing for the counter, like, it seems more strict in AC2 than it is for AC1, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. God damn it! It's so hard. I don't know what's going on right now. I normally don't have trouble with this. Got it finally. But you have to make. Yeah, but you have to not. You cannot counter. If you counter, you will embed the axe. I have to not die here. Okay. Oh shit! Okay, that was close.
Oh no. Normally just like run away, because that's what the game wants you to do.
Ooh, and let me show you a technique I learned like when I was in one of my earlier plays. You see that? So if you press square at the right moment after a block, Ezio will retaliate with a very fast attack, and it will stun the enemy, and then you can initiate a finishing blow. But the timing is very strict, but it's a lot less strict when you're using heavy weapons. It's just and he's dead.
With the big axe, dude.
Yeah, and that is the end of sequence 1.